Oh, you you went out a bit there.
Yeah, was it from the recording? Like, because you started recording, you think?
Oh, okay.
It might have been a delay.
Anyway, right. Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm your host for Plant Sumo, and today we have Noah on to talk about his plant-based lifestyle and balancing still eating meat with moving more into plant-based products, and how he manages to do that in a culture which is so focused on meat. I mean, he's American, so
Yeah,
welcome,
those
Noah.
Americans and their meat. Yeah,
And them and their steaks. Like,
yeah, McDonald's
so,
and all that.
obviously you've started to move into eating more sort of plant-based products. Like, can you talk through the sort of process for me, like how you kind of came to that point?
Yeah, so I've been doing this plant-based diet for about 2 years now. I
Mm.
started. The reason I started was because in America there's this guy named Tom Brady, and
Mm.
I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a
I have
quarterback for a
actually. It's
football
really
team.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's big over here. And sorry, my phone went off. Um,
I know it's fine.
he's big, and he came out with, and I'm a big fan of his, even though he doesn't play for like my favorite team, just because he's so good and so dedicated.
Mm.
And he came out with this book called The TB12 Method. Now, I'm sure a lot of you people are groaning when you hear that because, it's one of those like athletes trying to sell money with their book, and it's like it is. And there are some ridiculous claims in it. Like he says that because he's so hydrated, he doesn't get sunburn. And I'm like, all right, come on, dude.
It's
Uh,
just pushing it a bit, like.
a little bit. But and there are some ridiculous things, but at the base of it, it was, he follows a plant-based diet, and a lot of the core things are just, when it comes to athletics, just the idea of recovery and like stretching and rolling and all that. But then with eating, it's your plant-based diet, just eating healthier and eating more vegetables and more fruit and stuff like that, which honestly isn't something that's really that out there and ridiculous.
Mm.
I kind of, after reading that, realized, man, this was like freshman, sophomore year of college, I started doing this. So I realized, man, in high school, I was not eating enough vegetables. I'd eat them when my mom made them, but I never really
Mm.
went out of my way. And my diet, like most Americans and most people, it's you think of are you gonna have for dinner? They think, all right, a carb and a meat, and vegetables kind of like the side where
Yeah.
really the vegetables and should be the main portion. Like plants should be the main portion, and the meat
Mm.
should be a smaller portion. And I'm sure we can get more into specifics later, but so that idea like made sense to me. I'm like, yeah, like because when it comes to meat, it's like, yeah, you're getting iron and protein, but you only need so much at once. Where there's so
Yeah.
many nutrients you're missing out on if you're not eating vegetables. So that's kind of what inspired me to do it. So I kind of started pretty much just going out of my way and eating more vegetables during meals, and kind of cut back meat to once a day, pretty much at dinner. And I would, I think the ideal portion size is like a deck of cards, so I would kind of stick to that for portion size, and then kind of just gradually did that. And now I kind of at the point where I don't eat meat every day. I eat it probably maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and it's usually like one time a day, especially if
Yeah.
I'm the one preparing. Like obviously my mom makes dinner when I'm home, or if I go out to eat, like I'll probably eat more. But like when I'm cooking for myself, which I do most days, it's probably only like 3, 4 times a week, and it's once a day.
Mm. Oh, sounds like you have a real plan when it comes to what you do. And I mean, in terms of your inspiration, I think hearing that from athletes in particular is really important because so many people are put off by the idea of eating more of a plant-based diet because they have this idea in their head it isn't associated with athleticism, and it's far more difficult to build muscle and do stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're really into your sports then.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm in college right now. I go to Penn, and I'm on the track and cross country team here. So, I run a lot, and that was part of it. And I was part of the reason I started this because knew it would also help my performance athletically,
Yeah.
in addition to just kind of having a better lifestyle and just feeling healthier and whatnot. And yeah, there is that perception that you need meat to get protein to build muscle, which
Yeah.
again is true. You need protein to build muscle. Like I'm not denying that at all. It's just there's this misconception of how much you need, and I don't think people realize how much is in meat.
Mm.
Um, and because I think in one chicken breast, it's like over 40 grams of protein, which in one sitting you don't need more than 20 to 30 because then any excess, your body starts digesting it as fat.
Yeah.
Um, so I think people think that, oh, you need all this protein. It's like you do, but you got to spread it out and eat it in smaller chunks. So that way it's not, and then, so meat shouldn't be like the primary thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there are so many plant-based sources for protein, like tofu and like seitan are two that I can think of that have like a ton of protein content relative to their sort of density as plant-based products and stuff. But would you say like you've like feel the difference, and do you think you see it in terms of like your performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the level I'm performing at, it's like all this stuff is kind of those small like one percenters where it's not like, oh, I started eating, plants this week and all of a sudden I took 10 seconds off my mile time, something ridiculous. It's just kind of those
Yeah.
like little things. But I think going through day to day, I think I notice if there's times where I eat more meat, I kind of notice I feel a little less energy and a little more laggy and stuff. And maybe it's placebo, maybe it's not. If it's placebo, I don't care. I'll take it. Um,
Yeah.
but I definitely feel like I have felt better and I've just feel like I haven't performed better in the past few years since I started doing this.
I mean, you say it's placebo, right? But they've done a lot of studies about linking happiness to specific variables in people's lives, right?
Yeah.
And you would be surprised. The highest ranking thing, the highest like predictor of people's happiness, it wasn't like their socioeconomic level, or like how comfortable their lives were. It actually was how healthy their diet was and how much exercise they do. Because,
Really?
it's crazy. Yeah. Like, I mean, obviously it makes sense in terms of like the hormones which are being released every time you work out, but you wouldn't think that was the case,
Yeah.
would you?
Yeah, no, I definitely the part you said at first in terms of the your socioeconomic status. I've seen studies where money doesn't equate to happiness, so I'm not surprised about
Mm.
that. But the fact that it was much more linked to exercise and diet, I didn't know that.
Mm. Yeah, like I know myself, like I definitely wouldn't say I'm like an athlete or anything, but when I've gone through periods where I've done more sort of intense exercise, and I was vegetarian for a little while when I was in university, and like I know personally, whether it was like real or in my head, like I genuinely felt a difference in terms of like, like I saw it in like my skin, and like I felt a lot more energized throughout the day, stuff like that. Like it's kind of
Gotcha.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Mm. So were you motivated at all by any of the sort of environmental or ethical reasons? I mean, obviously it's fine if you're not. I'm just curious.
Um, no, because I don't think at that time I didn't realize that was the case. I didn't realize how bad I think the meatpacking industry and even like milking industry was how
Mm.
that it was that bad for the environment. So at the
Yeah.
time, no, I've been learning more about it the past year, and I think I've been trying to drink like I've been shifting more to almond milk for those reasons. And I think it's also just in general a little bit better for you. Um, so at the time, no, because I wasn't aware of how bad it was, and now as I'm learning more about it, I'm like, oh wow, this is actually pretty serious.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think obviously like it's good to care about these things and stuff like that, and I totally understand people turning to veganism for that reason. But I don't like the way people discuss these sort of issues in terms of like individual responsibility. Do you get what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the reason we have a crisis with the planet and a crisis with, meat production and, the exploitation of animals and stuff like that, it's not down to individual people who like, we are kind of biologically hardwired to, eat meat. It's quite natural for us. Do you get what I mean?
yeah.
I just mean in terms of like it's the industries and these big corporations' responsibility, and it's always pushed onto individual people and their choices when we should actually do something about those companies. Like,
Yeah. It's almost one of like their greatest tricks to make us think that's our problem and our responsibility when we're not even
yeah,
the ones who are doing this. Like I'm not slaughtering cows. I'm just buying it in the grocery store and they have it, they whether it's teaching in school or advertising, we don't have to get to this whole like the corporate state is taking us over, but they have us thinking, yeah, you need meat, you need protein, and it's just so ingrained when then yeah, like individual actions is like great and like you don't want to support it, but at the same time, me just stopping and eating cows, it might not be enough or isn't enough, and like how do you fix that? I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Like it's not gonna like change the world overnight, but yeah, I totally agree. Obviously you don't want to get into the whole like, oh, big corporation kind of
Yeah,
thing.
they're propaganda and
Yeah, literal brainwashing and all that. But
yeah,
like, yeah, there's definitely an element of truth to it.
yeah,
Um, Something I find interesting is soon I'm going to be interviewing someone who they're a vegan bodybuilder, right? And obviously they're
okay,
quite successful now, but initially in the initial process of actually developing muscle and keeping up their sort of like physical level of activity, they really struggled a lot with having a plan and necessarily knowing what to do. And I just found it interesting with like you seem like you did quite a lot of research and planning into making a shift in your diet. Would you like agree with that? Or
Yeah, I made
yeah.
sure I did some reading. I didn't go crazy, but I definitely made sure I did some reading because I've known people who have decided to go vegetarian and they didn't do
Yeah,
a ton of reading and they kind of just more cut out meat. They didn't make a change, which
literally me.
which yeah, like sometimes works, but a lot if you're missing those components. So like for me, for example, I was missing those vegetable components. So if I just cut meat out, I'm missing a lot, and that's a huge change where you
Yeah.
have to make sure that you're replacing it. It's not as hard as people think, but if you're not conscious about that, then
Mm.
and just you cut it out without, okay, how can I make sure I am getting the protein and the other nutrients I need? Because again, if you're thinking, if your main dinner is like meat and potatoes or carbs, and you
Mm.
just cut out meat, then like, yeah, you're gonna be hungry and you're just gonna be eating carbs, you're missing all these things. But if you, do it gradually and also add other things, you'll feel a
Yeah,
lot better because you're
exactly.
not missing out when some people then, people think they are because there's, oh, I cut meat out and I feel terrible. It's like, well, because you didn't replace it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I definitely empathize with that whole like going in without a plan, because when I went vegetarian, I did it mostly for like moral reasons and stuff like that. And
Gotcha.
obviously, stuff like that is still important, but it's not what makes a diet change sustainable. You actually have to have
Yeah.
like knowledge of what you're doing. And I think that's something which a lot of people struggle with when not even just like going vegan, but like making any like minor sort of diet change,
Yeah.
like those knowing how to necessarily take those sort of steps.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something that helped me too was looking up recipes for things because, if
Mm.
waste, because, trying to replace that protein. So what do you replace it with? I mean, like, first, your mind first jumps to like nuts and like beans and stuff like that, but I'm not just going to eat handfuls of nuts all day. So it's
Like
like,
let it scroll, like
yeah. So how can I, yeah, yeah, I got stuff in your cheeks and stuff just throughout the day. So it's like, yeah, so if you're used to having some form of meat during dinner, it's like, how do you replace that? So I found, these substitutes, like, I know you mentioned like tofu is a great substitute.
yeah.
I don't really like tofu, so I don't really eat it, but I found other things like I found a recipe for like this kidney bean burger. So it's got like walnuts in it, kidney beans,
Mm.
oats. So and it has a good amount of protein. So it's like almost a substitute. It doesn't taste like a burger, but it still tastes good. And it also, so it's like I'm replacing it with something and it feels like I'm kind of eating meat and it's part of my dinner. And I think mentally too, it like helps because I'm enjoying it too. It's,
Yeah.
it's a lot, diets are a lot better when you're enjoying it than if you're forcing
Yeah,
yourself
exactly.
to be miserable. So that's something that I found that's helped. I've found that has helped is finding recipes that are good and healthy and that replace what you're cutting out.
Do you really enjoy cooking then, do you say?
Yes and no. I don't like cooking new things, so that makes sense. I hate the first time I cook something because it takes me forever because I spend an hour in the grocery store trying to find these random ingredients I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And I end up calling my mom or my grandma like, "Hey, do you know where this is?" And they know exactly where it is. And I'm like, "Oh, I wish you were here." And then I'm in the kitchen, I got like 3 pots going and trying to like follow these instructions, and it's stressful. But then what happens is the more I do it, I get it down, and I also find the parts like, okay, I can do this part. I don't need the whole thing. So
Mm.
I kind of like cooking now once I get the recipe down because it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing. It's just almost a little cathartic, and I'll put in like music or a podcast or something, and it's just maybe listen to this one.
Yeah.
So
Promo moment, like
yeah, listen to this podcast, guys. Um, so I kind of like it now in that sense, but I'm not like, oh, I love trying new things and I love being in the kitchen all the time. Because then I hate cleaning up too. I hate cleaning up the kitchen.
No, like I totally get you. Like it's more what you have to do afterwards, and the fact that if you fuck it up, you essentially don't have
Yeah,
any dinner. So like, yeah,
yeah,
it's just that sort of like prep of trying it out for the first time. But like, I love cooking. I love cooking new things.
that's
Like
awesome. I wish
yeah.
I did.
I mean, I think it's good to definitely have like a list of like reliable stuff. Do you get what I mean? Like recipes that you're really used to cooking and every time you kind of enjoy them. That's something I would recommend for anyone listening, have a have a list of dependable recipes, especially if you're a vegan, because obviously you have far fewer options, It is inherently like a restrictive diet as much as you might find fulfillment in it.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if you're trying something new, then if you're doing maybe like a side that you like, so then you have a backup that, all right, at least there's something I know I'm going to make well and it'll taste good, even if you totally mess up this other part.
That's smart. That's very smart thinking.
Yeah, just thought of that right now.
Yeah. Just start like a cooking podcast now as well.
Yeah, that's the next step in
Yeah.
my career, cooking podcast.
Yeah, I mean, something I did enjoy when I went vegetarian for a little bit is experimenting with a lot of new food and like new like cuisines and stuff like that. Because I feel like, obviously, to a lesser extent in the UK, but a lot of the sort of like national traditional dishes over here are very like meat centered, you know? Like I'm Jewish and a lot of our cooking traditionally is very meat centered. So I struggled to find stuff that, you know, I could eat that I'd feel like satisfied with, that I knew how to cook. So I started experimenting with a lot of different like Asian dishes and stuff and a lot of different Indian dishes. And I just felt like they were just really inspirational and they had so many more different options in terms of like cooking vegetables and stuff. Like, would you say you did a lot of that with your cooking, or was it more like kind of going off stuff you've already made and kind of replacing meat with vegetable alternatives, would you say?
I would say more the latter. I think the
Mm,
biggest things, like kind of like I said before, is finding those like different substitutes, and also
yeah.
just figuring out that there are more than one ways to cook a vegetable.
Yeah.
Growing up, my mom steamed every vegetable,
Oh
and
my God.
I'm
No.
like, I just was like, all right, this is what I got, and I would force myself to eat it, and it was like sometimes it was okay, sometimes not, and then when because the TB12 book has recipes in it, and it was
Yeah.
like, all right, cook your vegetables like this, and I'm like, oh my god, you can do that, and just know I love cooking vegetables now because I cook them on the stove, just like put a little olive oil in a pan and just grill them up, or not fry, whatever the term is, saute, I don't know, cook them on a pan,
Fancy.
and throw some like salt, pepper, and just a little spice. I'm like, this is great. So that's been the biggest change for me, was finding a way to make vegetables taste good. Because now I'm like, I actually want to eat it. But I never thought about kind of doing what you were just saying in terms of trying other nationalities and other cuisines. Like that actually sounds like very good. I might try that now. I might see what else is out there. That sounds like something I kind of want to do now.
She's an inspiring moment, you know.
Yes.
But I totally get what you mean about like learning how to actually cook veg. Because growing up, I literally hated vegetables. Like thought they were disgusting. Like I was that like stereotypical kid where I like wouldn't eat like any of them, you know. But it's all because of how they're cooked. They're just cooked in a
Yeah.
way where you don't like them, don't enjoy them. Like steaming veg. Like
Yeah.
I feel bad for you.
The pro-
Like I empathize. Like
I appreciate it. The problem is that's like my mom loves it that way. So she loves steamed vegetables. And so I didn't know, and she just kept doing it like that. And then eventually I figured it out. I'm like, oh, you can do other ways. And we even my brother is kind of similar. Like he hated vegetables. He was the pickiest eater I've ever met growing up. And I won't go too much into detail on shitting on my brother, or I think I just sweared, sorry. D swears and all his. Um, Love the kid, but he just was a very picky eater. And then like I think they tried baking Brussels sprouts once, and he's like, "Oh, these are good." And he was eating them. We're like, "Oh my god, he's eating vegetables. This is crazy." And now I'm realizing, oh, it's because steaming vegetables, in my opinion, isn't that good.
yeah. Yeah, like makes them taste horrendous, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah, like, I've conquered so many food fears literally just by learning how to fry food. Because honestly, I do like fry most of my food. It's not the healthiest way to cook. I don't recommend, but everything tastes great. So
yeah,
that's what I'm gonna stick with.
whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God. So shall we switch over? Are you thinking?
If you're all good, yeah.
Are you sure? Like, I'm not cutting in too early to like put you on the spot or
No,
anything.
you're the host. So if you got more questions, if you want to keep going, we can keep going. If you want to stop it, like
My
you're
brain
the host.
literally just went like completely blank. Like, the windows
Yeah,
like powering off screen. Like,
yeah. I
like
mean, we've been going. Yeah, I mean, the little timer says 24 minutes, so we've probably been going. If you take out like us talking the first 5 or so minutes, like probably 15 or so minutes. That's probably a good amount of time if you want to like maybe just practice like your closer, be like, all right, like that was no whatever, you know.
yeah, sure. That's a good point. Again, another smart point. Something I don't think of.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you, Noah. That was an incredible chat. I really enjoyed hearing your perspective and your journey. And I hope you all tune in for next week. I'm Rachel, and this is the Plant Sumo podcast. I'm not going to add that at the end.
Hey, you gotta have a sign off. I think that was good. You're good, and then you started laughing. You keep going.
No, thank you.
All right.
Yeah, bye, guys. I just keep saying bye.
Oh, jeez. Cut that off for D.
Oh, no, wait, shit.
He doesn't care.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know. I always forget because obviously this is technically a job. Do you get what I mean? And I
Yeah.
thought they would be like a lot more formal with everything. It's like whenever he swears, I'm like, you know,
Yeah. I mean, I
yeah.
kind of like it. I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. Cause I swore during this, and then I usually during team meetings, I always try to make a point not to, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I just like that style. I think it just resonates with me a little bit more. So I don't have to be so, I don't know. It's just me.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like the people listening are like, they've never heard a swear word. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, swear words are just societally constructed. I mean, we just decided that these ones are bad. Like,
Oh God, here we go. It's all brainwashing. It's
it
all
really
society.
is.
We do live in a society. I
We
hate
do.
it.
If you ever get the chance, there's this American comedian named George Carlin,
I
and
love George
you do
Carlin.
okay. So have you like seen the Seven Dirty Words?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's the funniest thing ever. It was just like, yeah, we could say these, but we can't say these, and I don't know. That was actually I learned about it in a class at school, and on one of my tests, one of the questions was, what were the 7 dirty words that George Carlin said in his bit? Because I'm just like, yes, like, why can't we say fuck? Like, it's just a word. It means the same thing as sex. What's the difference?
Honestly, like I can't think of any other American comedians who I felt had much of an impact as him, you know? Just in terms of the fact
Yeah,
that obviously he was really fucking funny, but also he had so much in terms of like legitimate points to make
yeah,
about like your political situation over there. Because like
yeah.
I'm hugely into US politics. Like never talk about it with me. I'll like start fucking ranting for like 2 years. But yeah, I don't know.
No,
It's
one,
interesting.
I'd love to talk about U.S. politics with you. Some other time. Two, I actually last year did like a study at school, and like I studied a lot of like the history of like stand-up comedy in America. And if you want comedians that are more like George Carlin, they exist,
Mm,
but they're not as mainstream now. Like you look at the mainstream ones now, it's a lot more, as I'm sure you see, like, telling stories or just like one-liners and stuff like that, and
yeah.
less of what George Carlin did. Because there's, if you want to look up like just like Lenny Bruce or Bill Hicks, like they're a lot more. Lenny Bruce was in the '50s, so the humor is definitely different, but like the idea of, yeah, what George Carlin does and pointing out hypocrisies and stuff like that is there. But today, yeah, not as much. I think like Dave Chappelle is like one of the few I can point to, like the mainstream ones who like actually does stuff like that.
Yeah, I really
Uh,
liked what Jon Stewart did before he stepped down from The Daily Show, but
yeah,
I don't know if I'd like say he's necessarily like of a similar sort of, I don't know. I feel like his tone is very different. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. And also the problem with him is that like he was good, but he was also like he his show's on CBS, I think, so it's like
Mm,
Viacom, and so it's this big corporation. And there's
yeah,
examples where like you can tell he was censored, or he couldn't go as far as like I think he could have, or maybe he wanted to,
yeah.
because there's still a big corporation lobbying all the
We're back to
shitheads in
big
government.
corporations again.
um, so like, and like same with like Colbert, because like people, because when I was studying this, if you look up satire in America, like it's always Stephen Colbert, Jon Stewart, like there's the go-to, and it's like,
Yeah,
yes, but like they're more political comedy than satire and really getting at what needs to be said, like what George Carlin would do, if that makes sense.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like I used to watch a lot of Colbert's older stuff, when he used to
Yeah,
like directly parody like Fox News and stuff like that.
yeah,
But like I feel like ever since he got his own late night show, he's just really like lost it, to be
yeah.
honest. I
No, it's
don't
kind of a lot
watch
more
it anymore.
soft.
Yeah, exactly.
I
It just
agree.
feels very like corporate now. Do you get what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. And to like, I think, yeah, I think he would, because he did the White House address when when Bush was president, and like
Mm.
I think he did a good job of using humor to really like go after him. But then I think when it came to like more democratic, so like more left leaning presidents, he held back when there were times I think he could have kept going, and it was a little more. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Equal opportunity.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, so
Wow.
I guess I'll go. I don't have a ton of questions prepared because I don't. Again, like I think you did a much better job of this than I did my first one. Like did a really good job of keeping that conversational,
Oh, thank you.
and yeah, and my problem was it was much more of an interview, so I'm gonna try to go in not blind, but just kind of like start pretty much just can probably ask you like I'm gonna send it around, pretend like you're the founder of this podcast, if that makes sense, which you kind of technically are.
Okay.
Um, so that I'm gonna go about that, and then just if I struggle, I struggle. It
I'm sure
happens.
you do a great job. Like you come across really well, you know.
That's good. Thank you. We'll see how this goes. Okay. You ready?
Yeah, okay, I'm ready.
What is your last name Brown?
Yes, it is.
Okay, sorry. Just want to make sure I didn't say like
Literally
totally
the
wrong
most
last name.
boring last name on the planet. Like,
Eh, it's not like Smith. Smith is just like everyone's Smith.
mm.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, okay, let's go.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Founders, a podcast by Pearl Lemon, where we interview the founders of companies, businesses, startups, and the like to get their story and see what brought them here today. I'm your host, Noah Carey, and today I have with me Rachael Brown, the host of the Plant Sumo podcast. Rachael, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Noah. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, so glad you're on. It's great to have another podcaster on, so I have something in common with you already right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it must be nice having someone on who likes to talk as much as you do.
Yes. Yes. It might get a little competitive, though, if I want to talk more or not. So
It's okay,
we'll
just
see.
cut me off. Just turn my mic off.
Okay. I'm glad I have that permission now. So tell me a little about the podcast that you're doing at Plant Sumo.
Well, basically, the podcast interviews like influential sort of vegan figures. So anyone who's sort of actively involved in like the promotion or the sort of celebration of plant-based food. However, what we want to do is we want to promote their voices and kind of their stories and their opinions and all these sort of topics in a way that's really like inclusive and non-judgmental. We're really interested in like, you know, we're not here to preach to you about, you know, you should be a vegan, you should do this, you should do that. It's just a platform for sharing these people's stories and how cool plant-based food is, really.
Gotcha. No, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, you could probably just tell people to be vegan. Like everybody should be vegan, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the real
I mean,
goal.
they'll tell you, you know, 5 seconds into meeting someone, if they're vegan, they'll tell you. Don't worry.
That's a stereotype. I don't know how true that is. I feel like I know some who like aren't as I think that's one of those stereotypes that just may or may not be true. I guess I don't know. Maybe you could figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. I should investigate that on this podcast now, you know.
Yeah, that's the new goal. Are vegans really that full of themselves? No, we love all vegans on this podcast. Anyway,
Exactly.
what brought you to hosting that podcast?
Well, in my own personal experience, I've gone through diet changes where when I was in university, I interviewed someone for my paper who was like a climate change activist, and her name was Elsa Kent. Her campaign was sponsored by Emma Thompson, and it's still running, if I think so. It's called Durfest. And basically, what she said to me when I was interviewing her about the state of the environment and the nature of, like, you know, the meat industry and like even just the way cows are treated, it really affected me, you know, like emotionally. And I literally had no plan. I like woke up the following day and I was like, right, I'm never eating meat again. And
Oh,
then
geez,
I know.
I'm cold turkey.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously it didn't work because I had like chicken nuggets yesterday. But
Wait, are you telling me that the host of a vegan podcast
oh
isn't
god.
actually not even vegetarian?
No, I'm not. I know. It's disgusting. I'm a fraud.
I think this just turned into a big expose here.
It's gonna be like plastered everywhere, like
Uh,
in vegan papers and stuff.
so many
Um,
headlines.
I think part of it is like I'm interested in it, and I would definitely consider trying to go vegan. But I think it's more of like it's not just the journey of the people who are watching, learning more about plant-based food. It's also mine, and they get to share it with me. As you know, hopefully we'll all sort of get to a point where we're more knowledgeable about these things, and I can consider changing my diet again. So I think the idea of having someone like me who like still eats meat, kind of leading it, was all that kind of like inclusivity and stuff like that, you know, like
Yeah,
as in focusing on it as food, less as like a kind of moral stance, you know.
gotcha. Maybe you could even part of the podcast can be your journey transitioning to becoming vegan.
Oh god, it could.
That
Even
could
though
be
I find that kind of terrifying.
uh,
uh,
s- start small, you know, just
yeah.
slowly start eating like one less chicken a day, and then you'll be no chickens a day.
That's how it works. Like,
Yeah,
are you eating a whole chicken a day?
I'm not. Or
Like,
maybe
who out there is doing
we'll
this?
go maybe chicken. You know, you go to McDonald's and you get the 20-piece chicken nugget, but then you just eat 19 of them, and then
Wow.
the next
Okay.
time you eat 18, and then maybe you add like a carrot or something.
Is this assuming I get the 20-piece McNugget every time I go to McDonald's?
I'm just not you, just in general. Like, okay, maybe get the 5-piece. All right, I don't. Then
It's a good point. You slowly reduce down what you're eating, because the thing is with meat is it is a form of addiction. When you eat a lot of meat, it literally targets the exact same chemicals in your brain, the same dopamine rush that
Wow.
drugs do. And that's true with cheese as well. Like, I love cheese, but I'm aware it's drugs. Cheese is
Oh,
drugs.
cheese. All right, cheese is drugs. That's going in the
Yeah.
description.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm
But
calling this. I'm titling this episode "Cheese is Drugs," and then hopefully people will listen to find out more.
I'm sure a lot of people will tune in. It's a dramatic title, to be
Oh,
sure.
it is.
Yeah. But what you said in terms of vlogging and potentially going on a journey, becoming vegan myself, it is something we as like a company have considered doing. Like, soon I am supposed to be going out in Norwich, because I live in the countryside in the UK, and
Okay.
there's a tiny little city near me called Norwich, and
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
meant to journey out there and try something vegan. So that will be interesting, because I've never vlogged anything before in my life. So
That's exciting. Do you want to plug your vlog? Like, what's it gonna be called? Where's it? Where
like,
can we find? Where can we find this?
I mean, it will likely be on YouTube if it ends up existing. And God, in terms of title, I mean, Rachel eats food. maybe that's
Rachel
not
eats
the,
food.
maybe that's not the most engaging thing in the
I wonder what
world.
it's gonna be about.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of mystery in that.
Yeah, I love those titles that like kind of allude to like these like subtle hidden meanings in their content.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's better than some like YouTubers where they put things like I don't know, school first day brackets gone badly and like 7 exclamation marks. I don't want to do that clickbait shit. Let's be real and
Yeah.
direct.
Well, I mean, it is known that the more exclamation points you have in a title, the more likely people will watch it. So
It's a science.
maybe not 7, but like I would recommend tossing in 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
That's the way you hook them in, but you don't seem like too desperate.
Yeah.
It's the balance.
Yeah.
That's
It's
what
like
matters.
it's like Rachel eats food, not like Rachel eats food. You got to find
Yeah.
that right balance of
Like, I like to think of like exclamation marks as like each one indicates how loud you're screaming what you're saying.
yeah.
So so if someone's got 7 on, I literally just hear in my brain them like screeching whatever they're saying. It's
Yeah.
great. Love it.
That's how you get people to watch things.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so you said that you're going to there to try something vegan. Do you know what you're going to try, or do you have something you've always wanted to try, or anything in mind?
Oh God. I mean, I'd definitely like to learn how to cook like meat substitutes better, because I do have experience eating and cooking like tofu, seitan, like I always pronounce these wrongs. Is legumes? No, it's not. Legumes?
Legumes? I think legumes.
Legumes. Wow.
Like, all right. I'm not positive it's legumes, but it's definitely not legumes. I know
Yeah,
that.
it's not.
I think it's legumes.
Okay, I'm gonna say legumes and just go with that. And different like beans and stuff, but I've never really been able to cook them in a way where like I found them as flavorful as actually eating meat. So that's something I definitely like to do. And I'm really into, like I've already said, I'm really into like Asian and Indian sort of cooking and stuff. And I really like it, like Iranian, like Persian food, because I have relatives and stuff who've cooked a lot with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely because they have a lot of like vegetarian options and options where it's not difficult at all to simply replace the meat content with like a substitute. So I think learning a lot of those recipes would probably be helpful, because I'd find it like more exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To have a nice, not just vegan diet, but a culturally diverse
I know.
diet as
You're just
well.
enlightened. Like,
Yes. Oh, it's magical.
you're just, you know what I'll do? I'll just have my morning like smoothie bowl, and then I'll be like doing yoga, like in
Yeah.
my room.
Floating.
Floating on like the astral waves or something.
There you go.
Yeah,
Oh, that
exactly.
sounds amazing. So let's talk a little bit more about the business side of this. So
Okay.
this is for Plant Sumo. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about what Plant Sumo is?
Yeah, of course. Plant Sumo is a UK-based meal prep and delivery service. So essentially, you go online, you go on our website. We have a diverse range of like meals, like different sort of drinks, desserts, all that kind of stuff you can choose from for your week. And then you put in your order, you decide your order time, and it all gets delivered to you, and then you get to cook it and enjoy it at home. And I think especially with coronavirus, for people who are vegan or want to try out a more plant-based diet, it's just, we we set up at the right time, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, it just eliminates all those trips to the grocery store.
Yeah, exactly. You literally never have to leave your house. Just watch Netflix and have vegan food delivered. Like, that's it.
Ah, sounds wonderful. I mean, you can use the coronavirus as an excuse, but we all know deep down everyone wants to just be home all day and not talk to people.
No, literally, I mean, I don't disagree with that. Like,
Yeah,
coronavirus, yeah.
I've actually been dreading this conversation all day. I'm kidding, of course. This has been a
Honestly,
lovely
wouldn't blame
conversation.
you. Like, yeah, though. I think in terms of like actually just having the meals in front of you, because so many people like like me, they want to go vegan. They have a general idea of the sort of things they would cook, but not of how they would prep them and put them together and make it exciting.
Yeah,
So actually having this sort of meal service, I think for a lot of people who like, even if they're like flexitarian and they just, they occasionally eat vegetarian or whatever, or they have days where like they eat like less meat or whatever, they just have the opportunity to see what it would be like to creatively have like a plant-based diet, like giving people that opportunity.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Because I'm sure too, it'll make it easier for them to try foods that are plant-based, but also taste good, and like it'll be easy. That'll
Yeah.
be a lot easier on them too, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's just like I think so many people get it into their heads that like, vegan food can only be lovely and delicious if it's done by like a top chef or something. Because if you're the everyday person who's trying to cook vegan, the options you have in the shop are quite limited, and a lot of the time you're cooking a lot of the same ingredients into what you eat. But that's not necessarily true if like you know how to get creative with what you have. And also I think what you were saying earlier about knowing how to cook vegetables, that's super important. And
Yeah.
with the prep kits we have, there are a lot of instructions on how to cook your vegetables well. So pay attention.
I mean, when we think about it, it's not just vegan food. All food, meat, carbs, whatever, like it'll taste better with a professional chef. So obviously, if
Yeah,
everyone just had personal chefs, life would be a lot better. But this is a nice second option to have it, all the instructions and ingredients right there for you.
exactly. It's like if that startup business doesn't quite work out,
Yeah.
rather than getting that chef, you can just get one of our meal boxes. It's just as good.
Maybe not just as good, but pretty good. Pretty good.
Wow. Excuse me, I'm trying to promo here.
Oh,
Gotta
sorry. Yeah. No, this is the best thing ever.
yeah.
It is better than chefs, 100%. You guys should get Plantsumo. That's not. It sounds sarcastic. You guys should get Plantsumo. Seriously, it sounds amazing.
I mean, you're one of the first sarcastic Americans I've met.
Really?
Yeah, I've had a lot of American friends, and like I've said something sarcastic to them, and they're like, "That's so mean," and I'm like, "Come on."
I feel like that's not representative of all of us. I feel like a lot of my friends, maybe it's just my friend group, but we're all pretty sarcastic. I think depends on who you meet. That's funny though.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I don't know. I think a lot of people, over exaggerate the differences, but I
Yeah.
think in terms of the food culture, there is a noted difference, as in our food is shit. And American food looks fucking lush.
Yeah, but I mean, then on the reverse side, our food looks great, but there's the idea that we're all obese and overweight, which we're not all overweight, but we definitely have
Sorry.
an obesity problem in this country.
I mean, I didn't want to say, but yeah, I mean, maybe when we go global, obviously we're just UK based for the moment. Plant Sumo could be the first step for a lot of Americans in, going vegan.
Yeah, as an American, I give you permission to call us fat. Just make sure everyone knows that I'm not fat. I'm pretty not obese.
It's okay. Every time I like say Americans are fat, I will like preface it with I have permission from Noah Carey, who is
Yes.
not fat, to say this. Like,
Yes. That's all you need to say, and you're good. And of course, we don't want to body shame people. Of course, I mean,
yeah, that's
judge
true.
people based off who they are. But it can't hurt to try to promote having healthier lifestyles to live better, more
Exactly.
fulfilled lives.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, your weight has a correlation with your standard of life and your health. I don't think people can deny that, despite other people having differing opinions about, people still being able to feel like just as fulfilled at whatever weight. Like when it comes down to it on like a medical basis and in terms of diet, like obviously being obese is not good for you, but it goes without saying, doesn't it?
Yeah. And one thing I've heard that kind of helps is a better way to look at it is, change your body because you love your body, not because you hate it. So like feel good about yourself and change because you want to be better and you want to feel better, not because you think you are less of a person right now because of the way you look, because you're not. Like, you're just, it's about what's on the inside, and then the outside can just help you feel better and have a better life. But that's one way I looked at it.
I think that's a really, really wise thing to say, actually. I think a lot of people could do with taking that advice, because personal change, whether it be your diet or your habits or like your appearance, anything, it's hard. It's so difficult. We have so many ingrained behaviors and like norms and stuff like that get in the way of us being the people that we actually want to be. But when you're motivated by positive desires, like a positive idea of who you're going to be and stuff like that, like it is so much more motivating to you than like negativity, because negativity just leads to shame and it just leads to self-hatred. And when you feel like that, what you want to do is go back to the old behaviors that brought you comfort and security. And for a lot of people who suffer with things like obesity, that is unhealthy dietary habits. And, people don't talk about obesity in the way it actually is, which is like, it is like an illness. It really is an affliction. There's so many different factors that influence someone suffering in that way from that sort of condition. So especially when it comes to that and any sort of personal change, I would definitely totally agree with you.
Yeah, 100%. Because with anything, it sounds easy from the outside to be like, oh, well, just stop eating Twinkies or whatever, which is such a stereotypical thing to say, and it sounds easy when I say it like that. But yeah, I mean, like you said, like there are addictions, and changing your lifestyle is not an easy thing to do. And I have problems sometimes putting away the ice cream when I should. Like I should have put it away 3 bites ago, but you know what? I had 4 more bites, and it is what it is.
Hey, don't worry. No matter how much Ben and Jerry's you have, like you're clearly not suffering with obesity. So to comfort you, I say this.
Yeah, as you say that, I want to have the Ben and Jerry's podcast now and just talk more about that. But we'll keep it on Plant Sumo, and getting close on time. So before we go, do you have anything else you'd like to tell our thousands of listeners right now about Plant Sumo, about your podcast, about life, or anything?
Oh God, big, broad range of ideas. All I would say is make your choices for yourself. And when I say that, no matter what you're doing, whether it be like a big sort of like social change, maybe you're moving someone new, maybe you're starting a new job, or you are choosing to change your diet or try something new, you should always do it with your own needs, your personality, your habits, and your limitations in mind, because they are going to affect the outcome of whatever you do, and you have to make sure you keep to those specifics if you want to be successful, in my opinion. So kind of broad advice for a broad question, but I hope that was helpful.
No, that was beautiful and very helpful advice. This has been my interview with Rachael Brown of Plant Sumo. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, for everyone listening, please check out our podcast with Plant Sumo. And if you're interested in going into a more plant-based, vegetarian, or vegan lifestyle, or even just want to try eating more vegetables and different foods, check out Plant Sumo. Thanks for joining. This has been Founders by Pro Lemon.